Creating a character in Dungeons & Dragons can be a blast, but it can also be intimidating. D&D can be exhilarating. It will make you laugh, stress out, and even break your heart. Every character sheet is a blank canvas full of unlimited potential. This character could be anything, do anything. Someday we'll tell stories of their heroism and exploits, but right now, the one thing that is clear is that the choices you make in the next 10 minutes are going to have long-lasting impact on who your character is and the hero it will hopefully become. Let's make them as strong as possible, right? Wrong. Well, it depends on who you ask. My name is Sam, I'm a dungeon master and former teacher, and I've spent the last decade teaching over 100 new players how to tell their stories using my favorite game in the world, Dungeons & Dragons. In this video, I'm going to show you a common misconception about character creation, how correcting this Superman problem will change the way you build characters forever, and how your character's most glaring weakness might just be their greatest strength. At the end, I'll go over the method I prefer for building a character maximized for story, and how this will only help the rest of your table. This is Tabletop University. At the genesis of character creation, one of the first choices you get to make is deciding on your ability scores. 6 little numbers represent your character's strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. They are represented on a scale of 1 to 20 for player characters, or PCs, with 10s representing the traits of an average person, like me or you. Most level 1 player characters look something like our fighter here, with high numbers representing his strengths and low ones representing weaknesses. I'll get into where those numbers come from later. At first glance, it can feel like you need to make all 6 numbers as high as the rules will allow you to make the best adventurer possible. This is a natural impulse for most newer players, displayed by actor Jon Bernthal when he is introduced to D&D for the first time.
Based on your character sheet that you've created, you're going to be good and bad at different things.
Who I create the sheet?
You could, or I could, or you could get a pre-made sheet.
But why don't you just make your sheet that you're great at everything?
Because, you know, if you're a wizard who's in school studying books to learn magic, you're probably not spending that much time in the gym. Versus if you're, you know, a knight who goes out and slays dragons, you know, maybe you're socially awkward and don't know how to talk to people, so your charisma stats.
Interest to like not be great at everything.
You want flaws.
Your highest numbers determine the things your character will be known for, the feats they will accomplish, and the foes they will hopefully vanquish. While they are undoubtedly important, we can't ignore Deborah's advice to John. You want flaws. And I believe that the most influential number to the story of your hero could be your lowest one. Since the dawn of time, people have always told stories of heroes, stories of nobility, justice, and courage, something of greatness to aspire to. The solo hero is a symbol of hope for what mankind can be, but in the world of Dungeons & Dragons, it's not quite what we're looking for. Take a look at the most iconic solo hero of our age. Superman is a modern legend. He's the strongest, fastest, toughest being on planet Earth. Charming, noble, kind, he can fly, has X-ray vision, laser vision, freeze breath. For all intents and purposes, he is truly super. And almost every movie he's ever been in is bad, or at least predictable. This is commonly referred to as the Superman problem. First, he's really difficult to write. This is mainly due to him having no weaknesses other than Kryptonite and Lois Lane, which is why almost every Superman movie involves her being in danger or someone using Kryptonite against him, usually a combination of the two. This makes it incredibly difficult to come up with surprising obstacles, other than internal struggles, which isn't the best thing for a game that's half collaborative storytelling and half combat. It's also why it's even harder to make a team-up movie that includes him. Take 2017's Justice League. Pretty big spoiler here, but they spend most of the movie keeping him out of it, or making him the villain. As soon as he's allowed to actually join the movie, he easily takes out the bad guy, smiling the entire time. For our purposes as D&D players, the worst part of the Superman problem is when you are that perfect, that good at everything, there isn't much of an argument for why you need a team. James Gunn changed my opinion with my now favorite movie iteration of this character, but here's the thing, your DM, not James Gunn. You, likely, are not James Gunn. And D&D isn't a movie. Although one-on-one D&D does exist, in most scenarios, Dungeons & Dragons is a team game, and flawless Superman-type characters don't really belong on a team. Fortunately for us, James also gave us a blueprint for telling a compelling story about a team of flawed heroes. These guys. The Guardians are extremely flawed. Quill's a man-child, Gamora has crippling guilt, Drax is a lunatic, Rocket hates himself, and Groot is, well,
I'm Groot.
The first Guardians movie isn't groundbreaking, but the flaws are why everyone fell in love with the Guardians of the Galaxy. They're relatable, and above all, it is obvious to themselves and everyone else that they need each other. They need a team. The Guardians embody the found family of lovable misfits that make ensemble stories, like your D&D games, so fun in the first place. Here's the point. The heroes in your game must need each other, and it should be obvious. If they don't, or if there's a character that has no weaknesses, the game can grow very tired when that same character never fails. The longer this goes on, it can feel less like a collaborative game or a story, and more like a pile of really high numbers getting tossed at various challenges. If that's your style, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that all depends on what you want from this game. Siobhan Thompson, an incredible D&D player, acknowledges the benefits of faulty characters on Dropout's Adventuring Academy.
Don't worry at all about min-maxing. I think that that's a very short-sighted way to play, because often your faults are what makes the character most interesting, I think. And you're in a group of people, you're there to help each other out. It's not just about your character. You fill in the blanks that the other people leave.
Exactly.
Those blanks she's referring to aren't just things your character is bad at. They serve a real purpose. If you want your party, your DM, and yourself to know your character at their core, we all have to know their flaws. In How to Train Your Dragon, Hiccup is immediately established as high intelligence but low strength. Toothless is extremely powerful but needs Hiccup's inventions and guidance in order to fly again. Their obvious flaws are what make it so cathartic when they complete that first test flight. In The Hunger Games, it's the combination of Peeta's charisma and Katniss's hunting skills that makes the story compelling. If Katniss had a likable personality, it would no longer be the girl on fire, but the girl who was good at everything, who everyone loved, and also won the Hunger Games. So how do we avoid a Superman problem and build a flawed character? D&D actually has a section just for flaws on the character sheet, but barring some homebrew rules, they have absolutely no bearing on your PC's mechanics. For many players, these flaws are often forgotten or even intimidating to make visible because, let's face it, we're not professional actors or writers. It's much easier to make flaws feel real when the mechanics of the game, the results of your rolls, actually reinforce those traits. For those who have never looked at character creation through this lens, the game has a better way to build a character whose flaws actually affect their performance and are right there on the surface for all to see. The dump stat. The dump stat is a term for the ability where you dump the worst number in your stat array. And after that, it's usually ignored and even avoided. This makes total sense from a power gaming perspective, but if your goal is to tell a good story through your character, your dump stat should be just as defining as your heroic ones. Just as higher ability scores emphasize your PC's strengths, the best way to build a dump stat that mirrors this and shows your flaws is with an even lower number. This may seem counterintuitive, but if you're like me and my players, the reason we play this game is to feel like a hero. But true heroism isn't when someone strong engages in a fair fight. It's when a weak person stands and fights when they know they will likely lose. This is what makes Steve Rogers so compelling. Before he gets his powers, he's obviously weak, but chooses to stand up to villains even if it means losing. As he levels up and gets stronger, the character doesn't change. In Endgame, Thanos is vastly stronger than Steve, but he decides to stand anyway because that's who he is. That's what it means to be a hero. Our fighter from earlier was actually my character Oliver from a recent campaign. Because of his incredibly low strength score, my entire party knew that if he was in a situation where there was a strength-based challenge, I would likely fail. Believe me, there were times I did fail, but we learned more about him through how he responded to those failures than we ever did through his successes. Before you go out and build a character who's an absolute wreck, there are some nuances to creating your dump stat. First, I'm not saying you need to build your character incorrectly. If your character can't do anything right through the entire campaign, you're not gonna have a good time, and your party will eventually grow tired of having to cover for you on every front. Oliver here would eventually have a 20 dexterity and a 19 intelligence, making him extremely fast, smart, hard to hit, and deadly with psionic powers. And the Guardians aren't poorly built characters. Groot is a one-plant wrecking crew. Rocket is possibly the smartest organism in the galaxy. Drax and Gamora are deadly in combat, and Star-Lord is, well, Chris Pratt. Second, Superman-style, fully optimized characters aren't bad. Power gaming is actually very fun, but that's also a very different type of game and a different type of story being told. You have to decide for yourself what you want from the game you're playing. Most importantly, you need to be aligned as a table. Otherwise, it's inevitable that someone will have a bad time. Last, and most important, when picking a dump stat, don't make it one of your primary abilities. If you're a rogue, don't dump dexterity. If you're a warlock, you probably don't want to dump your charisma. You can find the primary abilities for each class in the player's handbook, so make sure to choose an ability that won't mechanically cripple your PC. Once you've selected your dump stat, there's one important rule to keep in mind. When building this dump stat, aim low. Most level 1 characters will start with an 8 for their dump stat, which I believe could be more dumpy. As I mentioned, a good flaw should be obvious to everyone, and that -1 and 8 gives you to your skill checks really doesn't make that much of a difference. A 7 or lower is where the magic really happens, resulting in a -2 modifier or worse. Kristen Applebee's from Fantasy High Season 1 famously has a 4 in dexterity due to her canonically wearing flip-flops, meaning she has a -3 to all her dexterity rolls. This doesn't make her less viable of a character, in fact it's just the opposite. It makes it glaringly obvious that she needs her other party members. So where does this dump stat actually come from? In the player's handbook, it gives you a few methods for generating your abilities. There's the standard array of 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and a dump stat of 8. 8's not bad, but like I said, we're looking for lower. An alternative in the PHB is to roll 46, taking the 3 highest numbers and just do this 6 times. This method gives you the best chance at that 6 or 7, but it's still not guaranteed. There's also the point buy method, but the lowest number there is an 8 as well. I have 2 methods I use as a DM that are reliable for generating that low dump stat. The quick and easy way is to just give the players the option between the standard array and what I wanted to call a tilted array, but my players ended up calling a spicy array. Yeah. Either way, it's 16, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 6. This way, their main ability is a little stronger at level 1, and their dump stat is just a little more interesting, a larger gap for other players to fill in. I discussed the Superman problem with my players beforehand and make the case for a stat below an 8. Not everyone bites, and that's okay because I love giving players difficult choices. I think at its core, that's what this game is about. Not only is this a great method for generating lower dump stats, but it's also a great way to set the tone in regards to your DM style. If you want to run games where the optimal choice is always the right one, that can be a great way to play. But if you want failure to be just as interesting or even more interesting than success, this is a great way to establish that precedent before the characters are even created. If you prefer to roll your own abilities but want a dump stat, the simplest way, my other method, is to start your array with a 16 and a 6, and then use the 4d6 method to roll the rest. In my current campaign, I have 9 players. Yeah, 9. 5 of which are completely new to the game because I really like to introduce new players to D&D. Most of them took the spicy array, and it has made it so much easier for them to grasp the strengths and the weaknesses of their party members because their failures speak for themselves. If you decide to build a character this way, don't shy away from non-optimized scenarios. Lean into failure. Your party probably won't know your stats at the beginning. They're all worried about their own. The druid from my 9-person party has horrible charisma, but is constantly speaking for the group, which has everyone else watching in horror most of the time. But when she occasionally succeeds, there's an eruption of cheers or sighs as her other party members can finally exhale. These moments wouldn't happen if not for this dump stat and our druid's willingness to lean into it. Your dump stat can also inspire your character's backstory just as much as their class or background. There are plenty of exceptions, but often someone's highest traits are the results of personal choices, and negative traits are often the results of their environment. For example, Oliver here was born into crime royalty, so he never had to work for anything, which explains his low strength. He failed multiple times to do a push-up during the campaign. When you never have to lift a finger, you don't get stronger. Oliver chose to spend his time reading, and that's why he has the high intelligence. In each of these examples, the mechanics actually back up the fiction of the character. The beauty of the dump stat over the flaw is that it's unavoidable. This creates subconscious expectations for the limits of your character, and with that comes the opportunity for a player to eventually subvert those expectations. Those moments that we all have in stories when a weak character stands strong or when a low intelligence character has a brilliant idea. Those are only possible because of obvious flaws. Weakness in an area is just an opportunity to show true strength, be a true hero. This is summed up perfectly in this quote from Brandon Sanderson's Rhythm of War. Who do you think is stronger? The man who has walked easily his entire life, or the man with no legs? The man who must pull himself by his arms. A low dump stat will help you, your DM, and the rest of your party know far more about your character from the very beginning, from the first numbers that you get to write into those boxes on that character sheet. As a story-first DM, for me and my players, this is how we typically like to play. If this isn't how your group plays, but you're interested, offer to DM a one-shot or a mini-campaign, then discuss lower dump stats with your party. Next time you build a character, resist the urge to build Superman. Pick an ability, aim low, if your goal is to tell a truly heroic story. And at the end of the day, story is all that matters. This has been Tabletop University. I've been Sam. Thank you for watching.